All right, so we are going to call this meeting to order. We do not have a flag per se, but if we want to stand up and just kind of...
All look a different direction.
Well, let's just...
one in every classroom.
That's truth.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mackenzie, I've opened a Word document and I'm willing to take sparse minutes of votes and recording unless you'd like to have somebody else do it. It's fine with me.
I would love you
Oh,
to
that's
do
what we were joking about. So if you want to go for it.
it. We would love that. We would love that,
With
Dan.
any
Thank
luck, I
you.
You do sparse notes and then send them to Robin. She'll
Fill them in.
fill them in.
That would be absolutely wonderful. All right, do we have any public hearing?
What is this?
You've got it. You're
Forget that.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
All right, so not seeing any public hearing. I do, our next agenda item is from some community recognitions. And so I wanted to start first with a recognition of retirement. Laura George is retiring. Laura has been here in different capacities for my math is 31 years. Does that sound right? So, and she's finally retiring, finally making that decision. So I just want to say thank you to Laura. I've worked with her both as a parent and as a staff member. My children have come through the school, so I've known Laura in a lot of different capacities. She has been certainly somebody who has always worked for the school and been a wonderful advocate of the school, and so she will be missed, and those are big shoes to fill. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of the hard work and dedication that she's given to Erving Elementary School over the years. And the next two are sad recognitions. We had a custodian, Joe Bucci, Mr. Bucci, as the kids would call him. Sadly, he has passed away. He worked for the school for over 12 years. He was also the local Boy Scout leader, so if you didn't know him from the school, you might know him because your children did Boy Scouts. Once again, my children knew him from here, and also my son from Boy Scouts. So we have fond memories of Mr. Bucci here in the school and in the community. He was a lover of gardening. He grew heirloom tomatoes. I remember he was very, very proud of his heirloom tomatoes. He gave seeds away so that others could grow those tomatoes. So once again, we want to just give our condolences to his family and appreciate the hard work and dedication that he gave to the school. And then our final remembrance is John Tomasetti. He was a teacher here for over 30 years. He started back in the 70s when the school was young, and he was a beloved teacher here. I know him best as the painter of the beautiful pictures, the landscapes around the building. He would, after he retired, he would graciously paint one or two paintings every year for the PTO at the time to use as a fundraiser. He auctioned them off, and it was always very special if you were the winner of his painting. There's several still hanging around in this building. He loved to do watercolor paintings, and so once again we want to just give our condolences to his family and appreciate all the hard work and dedication that he put into to this building, and even after retirement, continuing to support the school. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? All right, so we are going to keep on moving. We have some minutes that need to be approved. May 20th, 2025. I'll need a motion in a second.
So moved.
A second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
What was the date of the minutes?
May 20.
Thank you.
And then we have some warrants to approve. We have payroll warrant. We take them in batches unless anybody has a feels differently.
Oh, that's
So
fine.
payroll warrants 125 and 124 and 125.
I move we approve 124 and 125.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. We have some accounts payable food service warrants 1037, 1039.
I move we approve warrants 1037 and 1039.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have elementary warrants 1036 and 1038, 1040.
I move we accept warrants 1036, 1038, and 1040.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Caitlin, would you do secondary?
Yep. A warrant for secondary 1118, 1119, 1120.
I move we accept warrants 1118, 1119, and 1120.
I'll second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will abstain. All right, moving on to gifts and grants.
No gifts or grants.
No gifts or grants. Gil Montague representative. We do not have a representative here tonight, neither for Gil Montague nor for Franklin Tech. Okay. Collaborative for Educational Services report.
I don't have one at this time.
Okay, regionalization update. No update. Moving on, capital planning committee.
We have just a quick update. We did meet yesterday, Monday, June 16th, in the morning to get some quick updates. We got an update around the playground. So we hadn't been able to find an inspector, because they are so busy with new projects and other things. And so we got on a list that was for late fall. The committee kind of talked with the town and with the principal and the superintendent, and we've kind of identified that the playground is coming on 25 years old. And so in good faith, there is the likelihood that the playground is kind of at the end. Warranties are up. It's at the point where it's more of a let's look at what we have and look at what we could possibly make it into. So now we are going to have Shannon reach back out to those companies and say, hey, look, we've kind of realized that we're actually in a different spot. It's beyond repairing. It's actually, looking at a whole new plan of development, and what can you do to kind of help us? So the rec department is completing a playground on their end, and we were kind of talking about the opportunity for the school and the town to work on a joint procurement and identify a vendor that we would both use. The school would still work with the school, and it would be a school project, and the rec committee would still work with the rec committee, and it would be a rec committee project, but we might be able to get a better deal or someone more interested in having two larger projects versus one small project here and one small project there. So that is what we are going to move forward with. The school and the town are going to work together on that, and figure out the logistics, but it probably would be, we were thinking anywhere from like 100,000 to maybe 150,000, maybe more, depending on what needs to be done or what the outlook looks like for a plan. So that was an update on the playground, and anyone that was at that meeting, feel free to add more if you want. I'm just going down the minutes. We talked about the walkways. So Eric and Glenn have looked outside the walkways of the building from the front of the cafeteria all the way to the front of the building up to the connecting sidewalk. There are some cracks, there are some issues, some places that aren't ADA compliant. and things are falling apart. So they are going to have Johnson Asphalt and Paving come and look at the sidewalks and walkways to kind of let us know what work needs to be done and what that scope looks like. And they're also going to look at that back exit entrance near the back end of the building where they exit and enter for recess. So we will have more updates regarding that after they do the walkthrough, and they're hoping to get that work done over the summer if possible. Then let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. On the 2 funded projects that got passed at town meeting, were one was the roof HVAC system and that initial process, and then the other was the blinds. So thank you for the townspeople that voted that in. We're excited to be able to get these projects going. With the roof and HVAC, we did submit that MSBA application. We probably won't hear anything until October or November. And instead of starting the process now and spending money on that process and then having to redo it if we get chosen for the MSBA application process, we're going to hold off for now to see what they say in the fall in hopes that they accept us, and then we can move forward with the next steps with them, or then we'll have to kind of look at what other options we want to move forward with at that time. But considering summer coming up and us kind of reconvening in September, we wouldn't be able to get a lot done between then and when we hopefully hear back from them. So the committee has decided to wait for this announcement from MSBA before moving forward with that. I'm gonna pause, make sure no one wants to add anything.
That's fine.
Okay. And then blinds, so that got passed, and the town and the school is going to work on the procurement process. We're recommending that they get as close to the same blinds that have most recently been installed as they have worked, and everyone likes them. So that's kind of what's going on with those blinds. So the ones that need to be replaced will be replaced, and that work is possibly going to be done over the summer as well, which would be exciting. And then the last thing that was new business that we talked about was one of the rooms that in the building where it was presented to us to have some extra walls put into place to create more sensory, smaller rooms where children can have quiet areas that they're able to kind of relax, regroup, decompress. And so this is in one of our smaller rooms that isn't a classroom, and it's going to be like a T-wall kind of put up to create this space when there's not going to be any doors or anything to shut, but more of just like a little cozy cave, I guess you would say, because it's not even, the walls aren't going to touch the ceiling or anything, so we'll have plenty of ventilation. It's not going to be like a closed area. It's more of just right now all the space that we have is very open and not as comfy cozy as some of these children would like, that we're able to support them better with their needs. So this isn't something that we have to vote on, but we wanted to bring it to the whole committee's attention that this is something that Capital Committee is in favor of, and we're excited to see that transition. And their work, they were going to try to put it in the budget or use budget funds for this year, but because the work can't be done until after July 1, it will have to come out of next year's budget. But Caitlin and Beth and Shannon have looked at that and feel confident that the project is under $10,000 and that we will be able to have funds to be able to fund this project and make it happen. So those were kind of all the updates. Okay.
And part of the reason we were sharing the ideas, and something that Beth worked closely with both Brian, the staff here, and Glenn, right? All of those. And we want to share it with full transparency so that you're fully aware, but it's not anything that really requires a vote because it's not an expenditure that goes over the benchmark where it would be a procurement project, and that we'll be able to absorb it in our budget.
Where in our budget is that being absorbed from?
We have some maintenance lines that we can look at, and we've had some transitions. So I think that even if we run over on some lines, there are others in the budget that we'll be able to compensate it.
Okay, because we did not budget a $10,000.
Nope.
When we talk about the playground, are there concerns with the functioning of the equipment, or simply the floor, the flooring material underneath it?
I'll let Beth speak a little bit more about that, but I will speak about, so we started talking as a capital planning about getting a kind of like a checkup, a safety assessment from a vendor, but we don't have any pieces that this has to be replaced, it's broken. And the reality is they are in such demand that if you're not looking for their input because you're going to buy some of their products, you go to the bottom of the list.
Sure.
And so we've sort of been waiting. I'll let you speak about the quality of the playground, but it was something that Brian actually brought up and said, looking at warranties are ending, there's another project going on in town, maybe we want to take a different look as opposed to just getting a safety assessment. So I'll let you speak.
The primary issue is the flooring is out there. It is a good quality rubber floor, which prevents kids from being injured, but it also degrades over time, and it's been there for more than 2 decades now. And so it's got holes, which are causing tripping, and it's got rips in it that are coming up. And so it's the flooring is the primary issue. There are a few pieces over time that have fallen off, but they don't necessarily present a hazard because they're not structural pieces. They're more decorative pieces that have fallen off. And so we removed the bolt in that area that's to the decorative component and made sure that it's safe for kids to be on. So we're really looking most closely at the flooring, which is causing tripping and falling.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering if we could maybe look into the cost, plan A, the whole thing, plan B, just the flooring. Because the playgrounds are incredibly expensive, and so if there's useful life in the playground still, that might be something we can put as a longer term plan, allow us to build up some of that.
Agreed.
But for sure, the flooring it certainly is an issue. We've noticed that for a couple of years.
I know we've talked about can the floor be redone? I know we're saying floor, ground. Can the ground be redone without removing of equipment? If we're removing equipment, similar to when we talk about the roof, are we going to get a new roof and put old equipment back on it? And so there's a lot of that too, which we haven't really been able to get an answer of because we haven't been able to talk to someone. But from stuff that I think we've looked up and people have said that's a guess of some of that. And then also just some of the functionality or not enough of a certain thing or just needs of out that space, kind of looking at it as if we're going to do it once the right way, hopefully, and not piecemeal it together and deal with other problems. I know in the past, bolts have been missing or pieces have been having to take apart, or if you really look at it, there are some of that rubber coating that's coming off that could shortly cause issues in the past. So, I think from afar it looks great, and as you get a little closer, there are definitely some spots where it's
I think the issue is that if the town is already doing a new playground elsewhere, and we can tell that same person, we could be doing this one because it's past its buy-sell date, then and they'll look at things, then we can get the inspection out of it that we can't get now. And the question of floor alone, we also mentioned that if you were to pull the floor, you might find that, say, the swing anchors and other anchors are deteriorated. So I think the way we're talking about going about it by connecting up with the other project that's being done in town and having that person look at this too sounded like a good way to go, so that we could find out where we would be at. So that would come into next year and potential capital expenditures next year.
Right. I think he actually said fiscal year 27 or 28, right? Was what Brian had said.
I think that was 27, but that's but that was the timeline for Zelensky.
Okay.
And so if we were going to partner the two projects together to try to get a better rate for the town for both their location as well as our location, I think they were looking at trying to target 27 as the date.
I do think it will help, to Mark's point. When I had called trying to get a safety inspection, I wanted to be honest with people and just said, we're not really looking to purchase right now. What we're looking just to have someone come in and say, give us kind of a general health of the playground. I think this is going to move us up because there's another project already underway. And so, from a business perspective, I think that that's going to help us get the inspection in a quicker timeline.
Yep.
One other comment back to the room adjustments that you were talking about or proposing. That would be doing it in, I believe we said in August, correct?
It would be, yes, the end of July, beginning of August.
So it would be after the end of this fiscal year, so it would be in next, but it would also be ready for school next year.
Yes, it would.
And I was very pleased with the design that you laid out. Not the shape, which a mirror.
She's not a
image.
CAD drawer.
My artistic talent was limited. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed the question about what's possibly fiscal year 27 or 28 and what's this summer? Which,
The fiscal year 27-28 would be the playground
Okay.
if we proceeded in that direction. This summer is we're putting in 3/4 walls and creating some small, kind of more safe
Okay.
spaces for
Gotcha.
kids who could become overstimulated by. We're going to have some lighting coverage that'll like dim the lights in the area, and
okay,
a little bit more emotionally. We're calling it a sensory support room, and a little more emotionally safe for children
Okay.
who struggle.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we're moving on to the superintendent report.
Okay. Some Erving Elementary School updates. Director of Curriculum Lindsay Rodriguez has been working closely with Principal Gannon and the math coaches to enhance our current program and plan for next school year. We are excited to fully utilize our coaching program and to expand on our benchmark assessment practices to improve student learning outcomes. I want to echo the congratulations and thank teacher Laura George for her dedication and service to the students of Erving Elementary. We wish her well and are a little bit envious about her new adventures. And Erving Elementary will be hosting opening day activities for school year 2025-26. Union 28 updates. The communities represented in Union 28 have concluded the budget approval process with all district budgets approved, and the schools of Union 28 move into the next fiscal year with some clarity, although we are still waiting for federal and state allocations to be shared. Some legislative updates. A state legislature held a hearing on educational amendments that included Bill S3114 H517, an act to provide a sustainable future for rural schools. That hearing was held Tuesday, June 3rd. I joined the hearing remotely and have submitted written testimony in support of the legislative proposal. I did link a summary of the bill in your agendas. Local support is also coming from Senator Comerford, who shared the following. Rural schools face many structural challenges, including declining enrollments, stagnating local tax bases, disproportionately high transportation and special education costs, and a state funding formula that favors schools with dense populations and larger enrollments. The bill takes a comprehensive approach to address these issues by creating new grant programs and funds for rural schools and regional school districts, for school building construction and renovation, and for exceptional transportation and special education costs. By supporting shared services among regional schools and looking for ways to reduce their healthcare costs, and by establishing a commission to review and update special education regulations and funding that better supports all schools. The bill will also ensure representation from Western and North Central Massachusetts on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Right now, there is no representation on the DESE board for this region. Final budget figures from state and federal sources have yet to be determined. However, we continue to monitor developments closely and remain hopeful that there is no significant negative changes. And every time I say that, I want to say nothing changed today, right? Because it's pretty fluid. As I conclude my first year of the superintendency, I'm proud of the progress we've made in fostering forward momentum at Erving Elementary School and across Union 28 schools. We've established greater consistency within our leadership team and have begun implementing data-driven systems and structures that will support long-range planning efforts. I want to extend my sincere thanks to the Erving School Committee and municipal departments for their support and partnership through this inaugural year. Your dedication has been instrumental in laying a strong foundation and fostering a more collaborative environment. I would also like to express my appreciation to Beth Gannon for her leadership at EES. She stepped into a building navigating not only a change in central office leadership, but also a period marked by unrest and uncertainty. Beth approached this challenge with a thoughtful, methodical style that reflects her depth of experience. She committed herself not only to understanding the staff and students at EES, but also became an active and engaged member of the larger Erving community. Beth has addressed complex issues with calm, direct manner and has demonstrated a strong commitment to sustained growth and progress in the school. I would like to thank the staff of EES for their openness, flexibility, and collaboration as they adapted to new leadership, new practices, and new programs. Your willingness to engage in thoughtful discourse and make adjustments in practice has not gone unnoticed, and it is deeply appreciated. I look forward to continuing the positive momentum at EES as we head into year 2. And that's it.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for your first year. I think things have gone very smoothly, and things are quieted down, and we can see by our many audience members that they're feeling confident again in this process and in this school, and so that's a lot to do with you coming on board. And Beth, we're happy to have you, and you also came at a time that was tricky. So hopefully now we've gotten ourselves into a nice place where we can be calm and everybody can just go back to doing their jobs.
There were a lot of moving pieces this year. I really, I know we had 3 of 4 principals were new. A director of student support that was new. Executive assistant to the superintendent that was new. And so although they're not directly tied to Erving, I do want to thank Caitlin and Kelly Sullivan from New Salem, because they provided me a lot of input about how this is how we do school here. Kelly had some, historical knowledge about U28, although maybe not this school specifically. And Caitlin has answered 100 questions because I have not been familiar with municipal funding. I've always worked in regionals, and it's a different beast. So I'm very appreciative. It was as smooth as I thought it could be.
Yep.
I remember when I got hired, I had my interview, and I was leaving my interview, and Mark said, "If you get it, good luck." And I thought, I'm not sure what that means.
I will say thank you also for just the communication, constant communication, not only with school committee, but also with families, just sending out those newsletters quarterly or monthly or whenever it feels right is just huge and greatly appreciated. And I think that just, hearing from you throughout the year about what's going on and different things means a lot to people, and it provides some transparency. It provides that open communication and that invitingness of like, oh, she cares about us, even though I'm a parent of a, whatever grade and I've never seen her before, but at least she's thinking about our families and putting those messages out and stuff. So that is greatly appreciated. I know you might not always get response for them,
That's
but
okay.
we hear about it in the community.
Okay,
So.
well, for sure. Thank you.
In spite of that comment, I was rooting for you from the first interview over there in your school.
Well, thank you.
Could I have one question. I'm just hitting the highlights, but what was the bill number that you supported?
The bill
At the very
is
beginning of your report.
S.
It's right in your right in your
okay.
packet
Yep.
too.
It's S314 H517.
H what?
517.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dan, just so you know too, anything that's like a report, we will send or have attached to it, so you don't have to try and verbatim and somebody's report.
Okay, yeah.
Makes it a little bit easier. Okay. Director of Finance and Operations.
Sure. So we had 2 DESI food service reviews this year. We had a procurement review, and we had a full administrative review. These happen, it had been every 6 years, catching up since COVID, but now it's roughly every 4 years. Erving was selected for both of them. So the procurement review happened in the fall. Mm-hmm. They came out. We didn't get any of the corrective actions until a couple weeks ago, but we've submitted our corrective action plan. We've not heard back about that yet, but the administrative review, we received the corrective actions. We wrote out the plan, submitted it, that's been approved, and our review is officially closed. So it's great news. Anytime that a food service program has one of these reviews, it's a tremendous amount of work for the food service director. This was a stressful year for Donna LeClaire. She had a lot of, you have to provide so much information. They come in and they look at every single thing in your kitchen and your books and the cafeteria itself. And so it was a pretty intense review, but we're on the other side of it now and hopefully get a couple of years
Can you
off.
share with us anything about the corrective actions that were required?
They range. So there's some that are like, we need a meal modification policy for our civil rights policy, so that we're going to talk about this summer and have that policy brought to the policy committee. There needs to be a public release for the food service program that we do in the around town, I think every year, and this year we could not find where it was when it was posted, so we just now that it'll be in there, in the fall. We can also post it as a public posting also. There was our food service revolving account was a little bit over its limit because you're only supposed to keep in a revolving account the average of 3 months of expenditures. And since we're a small school, small program, that's kind of a smaller limit than most schools have. So we made part of our plan of what we were going to do to make sure that we stay within the limit. A lot of those kind of little nitpicky things. No food safety. I think there was one can that wasn't 6 inches off the floor, but I think that was that, and we needed more thermometers, which was corrected on the spot in the fridge, because you can have the fridge thermometer, but then there just needs to be a secondary one. So now we make sure that we have a secondary one, and so that's basically all of them, I think. Oh, and we need to do some more stuff with our wellness committee, which is we've got a full plan.
That's on our summer agenda.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
The wellness committee.
Right.
So every district used to have a wellness committee that reviews and updates your wellness plan every year, and we've been a little lax with that in the last couple of years. So pick that back up. So as we kind of turn the corner out of winter, sometime around February, March, I start to put together these spreadsheets of all of our expenditures to dates, encumbrances, and the what makes it different than the spreadsheet, the expenditure sheet that you receive, the report you receive at every school committee meeting, is that I do it in a Google sheet so that I'm able to manually encumber things that the system can't. So what I've attached to my agenda is just the most recent spreadsheet. It's not something that evolves because it's not linked to our system. It's just a snapshot of here's where we are on this day, here are the encumbrances we're going to do, and it gives us a projection of where we're going to end the year. So I thought it'd be a good time to link it for you for the most recent one, and you can look through the expenditures and see where some of the encumbrances are made. One of the issues we have is because of the structure of our union, any of the Union 28 lines, we can't encumber in the Erving system. So we can encumber it only in the little pocket of where it's actually being paid out of through New Salem Wendell's system, but we can't encumber it in ours until they're actually paid. So any of the central office salaries, any technology we're about to purchase, going to purchase. And so this gives me an opportunity to manually put those numbers in so we can get a better idea. And then there's the list of the most recent, since the last meeting, elementary school expenditures and secondary expenditures.
So when it's saying like a negative, does that mean that the line item in our budget was overspent?
Yep.
Okay. Because there's some consistent ones with like library staff materials, textbook materials, library materials, sped instructional supplies, and then instructional supplies that I feel like if we get to a point, if they're not like an actual dire thing before going over, we need to relook at what is actually being spent, and does it need to be spent now, and does it need to be here and now, or can it be for next, like I feel like some of them, if we go over a little here and there, I get it, but if we look at some of these, like this is it ends up being like, $20,000 in materials or whatever, these 3 lines that I listed off that we've spent over now, and where is that money coming from, and that kind of thing. And I think we've talked about that in the past, is looking at our line items and bringing them as tight as possible, so that way we're not going, well, we have money in this other area so we can spend over here and spend over there. And I know we're getting better at that, but I always just like to call that out when we're doing that, especially when it's things like materials that usually aren't so in need in that moment, and $2,000 over for each material line starts to add up.
Was there anything else before?
Nope.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious about, in the budget we have the specialist teacher sped line, which is in the negative by quite a bit of money. And then we also have the teacher aid sped line, which again is in the negative by quite a bit of money. Can you talk about that? Did we hire different people? Like, I'm not sure why that line should be so different. So
I can tell you for the 2 paraprofessional lines, they're one's over by 40 or 43,000. The other one's under by 44,000. So it's probably a shift of, there was a student that would have been categorized as a general education or a classroom paraprofessional. If we had a need to assign a special education paraprofessional, that's probably what happens, and it's where you see the discrepancy.
okay, and then what about the specialist teacher sped?
I'd have to look, because there's also the line above the teacher specialist teacher regular ed is under by 75,000. So that also could be change of, if a teacher was listed in one category but moved to another or something in the system, or if we have any staff leave and then other staff come in, that changes things too.
But
I
have
can
we?
speak to the para piece, only because I've been speaking with Amy. If a student's educational plan changes and they need, it's in their plan that they're going to get support, if we can juggle the resources we have here to cover that, it doesn't change our staffing, but it does change for us where it comes out of. So that's when she says, like, you might see the general ed paras dropped by 40,000 because someone got reassigned as a special education para. If that makes sense.
Yep, it does. My question though is, you mentioned staffing changing. I'm wondering, not in title but in bodies, did we change
We did
staffing?
not hire anyone new.
Okay.
No. But we'll see things like, for this year we weren't unable to fill a school psychologist position. So we still use that line to do all the, when we contracted out for the evaluations and assessments. And so that line we were well under on, because we didn't have a physical person here every day that was an employee of the district. We had a couple people kind of put together. We also changed the way that we're using some of our grant funding. So last year in the budget season, we'd anticipated using IDEA funding towards a special education teacher. That shifted to a paraprofessional because, well, it gets in kind of the little nitty parts with MTRS, but it sometimes when we planned on for grant funding changes to what we actually receive, if we receive more. For things like circuit breaker, we don't know how much we're going to get when we budget, and when we receive more, that can usually help to bring down the budget more. So our budget at the beginning of the year is our best projection of where we're going to spend money, but throughout the year these things change.
Well, I think that, for example, in the superintendent's report, when I said, we have a budget for next year, we have planned on our federal and state incoming funds, but we don't really know what those are. I think rural aid we're already in school when rural aid comes
Yeah,
out. So,
November.
We've made and sometimes that can create some overages because where you thought you were going to have rural aid to pay it, now you've got to use that line. But I do see your point, and it's something we can continue to streamline so that it tells a better, more transparent story.
And I think, just like I said, like with materials, I know some historically in the past there's been some like, let's just buy everything because we have money there, which also isn't great either. And then because there's overage, and then now, or because we had extra money, and now it's like, oh, we're overspending by thousands of dollars, and why is that, and what are these materials? And they didn't pop up like in expenditure reports or as like identified as things being brought to us like, hey, we're spending $10,000 more than we anticipated for special education materials. What were those? What does that look like? That kind of thing.
I will say, as far as materials, and I'll let Beth speak to it. We have not, I just, for people who are listening and not able to see it, I want them to understand we have not gone over our budget. Certain line items have gone over. I think that's important if I'm a taxpayer sitting at home and think what's going on. We haven't gone over our budget. We've stayed within that. There can be some lines that, and I do hear what you're saying, and it's something we can work on. I will tell you, and I did tell principals, we have a lot of uncertainty about what we're going to get state and federally. And so I have told principals, listen, I want you to be mindful of, we don't know what we're getting next year. And so if you have room in your budget, I want you to buy some of the things. And that's a common practice I'm sure you've experienced in other schools. We're not going over our budget, but it does create a buffer, because what if we don't get the Title I funding that we're anticipating? We also want to be mindful of, did we make the best use of the fiscal resources we had in this year? And the reason it's over is because we do want it to be transparent. I don't want it to be, a shuffling game where if you just take a quick look at it, well, everything looks great because the budget is over, is within the total expenditure. So does that kind of answer your question?
I think I just sometimes we see it on the expenditure, and that's not something we're seeing. Or at least that I, when I review it, I'm not saying like, oh, this was special ed, or oh, this was this materials, or oh, we need new library books. Great. If we need, it's not that I don't want the spending or think that, we can't or need certain things. It's more of just, like you were saying, some of that transparency of when we start to go over, not by $100 or $200, but upwards of $1,000, $2,000. What are those materials that we're getting? What are we using them for? And hey, we identified a need. Great. Thanks for sharing. It's more of just knowing and kind of hearing about it versus seeing it later of now we're under in this line and over in this line kind of thing.
And to be clear, what you have, the spreadsheet you have in front of you, is the same report that you receive every month. It just has an extra column where I'm able to manually encumber. But all the other numbers come straight from the expenditure report.
I think though, while I understand what you're saying, and to some degree that's reasonable, I also caution, because historically the way that these budgets have been built for the following year is they look and see how much was spent. Okay, we must need at least that much. But if it is the case that we are potentially pre-buying, or there's uncertainty, so in a year you are wanting to spend on that line, that artificially could inflate it for the following year, where we didn't actually need all of that much, but there was some
Fair enough.
circumstance that was in place at the time, and that's why that money was used. So I think, we all just need to be kind of cautious of that when we're building the budget, that we're not building it solely by looking at what we spent last year and adding 3%, but we're looking at what is actually needed and then building the budget from there. And I think historically that's not always been the case, and it's something that this board has been really trying to chip away at and get back to the needs-based versus let's just take what we spent last year and add to it. Take budget.
Sure. Okay.
When we have outside contractors like consultants, like your psychologists come in and do the testing, whose materials do they use? Our materials, or do they use their materials?
It depends on the contract. Typically, they'll come in and they're not going to use their own. They're going to say, I need this, a dial or whatever they need.
Yeah.
And we have to purchase that if we don't already have it. So that can change, what we've planned, because we don't know what assessments are going to necessarily come up in the year before, if that makes sense. I mean,
Sure.
you can have a rough idea. I think in a school this size, you can give an approximate that it's going to be.
And we tend to use the same tools also. Because that's another line that I'm noticing is quite a bit out of whack. And so, is this a one-off year where we just had a lot of assessments, or is this something that we need to be looking at?
So I actually could speak to that. I did put a new structure in place for this. All budgetary items that were being proposed had to come through my office, and I actually sat with staff and had them explain why we needed it. Who was it connected to? If it was a special education line item, I wanted to know what who the child was and where in the IEP it referenced if the child needed this item. So we had a couple of kids who needed stand-up desks that were in their IEP. It was written in, and so I said, okay, we need to account for that. How many? And I actually went back and did a survey with the staff and said, how many of those do we have in the building? And does the number of desks we have in the building already account for the number that are needed based off of IEPs, or do we have to purchase a couple of extra to make that happen? But to answer your question about the testing, it is to some degree a bit of a one-off. We ended up with a number of tests that have gone out of date. They were all purchased around 2019, and we are now in 2025, and so we kind of had the poor luck, we'll say, that we had a whole series of tests that all needed an update to the newest cycle with the new margins for them. And then we also had a couple of tests that just didn't exist. We now have hired a school psychologist, so we'll no longer be contracting out, which I'm very excited about. But that means that we genuinely do need to have the correct items, inclusive of a test that for preschool that did not exist in the building. And we have a number of kids that are coming in that need to be screened properly. And so it was sort of I call it a one-off because it's really like a once every 5 years off. To be fair.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Are you all set, Caitlin? Yep. Okay. Moving along. So you on our agenda, it does have end of the year transfers, possible vote.
No need for any transfers.
Okay. So we're up to the principal's report.
Great. I have 3 items listed, and then I have a thank you at the end that I'm going to talk a little bit about. So our enrollment numbers have not shifted over the course of the last month, which is why it still says 512 on it. Just 'cause we haven't had any additional ones. We have not shifted. We will any additional enrollments for next year, and we have not done any additional ads for school choice. We are waiting until after the 1st of July, and we're doing the remaining slots for that because we are waiting to see. We have a few kids that we believe are leaving because the families have indicated that they're moving, and so we'll look at that at that time and see if we are filling those spaces. But at this point, that's where we are at. It looks like we will not fill any slots at this time for anything in the 4, 5, 6 range. The 3rd graders going into 4th grade already have the one additional student that was a sibling. And then we are at 15 for fourth graders into fifth, and we are currently at 17 fifth graders into sixth, and we are only aware of one child who will be moving to Great Falls for middle school. The remaining students have not yet indicated, although we hope they will all stay. They have not indicated that they are moving on. We did get an opportunity to meet a new family for pre-K recently, and I'm hoping they'll be signing up. So we'll see from there.
Is there a
Yes.
plan? And this might be an Amy question, so you can defer to it later. To up enrollment for the STARS program, or stay at 2? What like for next
so the
year?
plan is, and Amy could certainly speak to this more, but the plan is we would like to go up to 4, but we are being fairly deliberate in making sure that the children that are both coming in here to, witness the program, and also when we go to look at them, are an actual match for the 2 students we already have. So we did meet with the family today. Amy can speak more to that at some point if the family is going to be moving forward with this. But the reality is we want to make sure we're fairly protective of our Erving student who's in that program and our Leverett student who's become a part of our school family here, and want to make sure that any child we bring in is going to make the environment healthier, not detract from their experience. And so we're trying to find and recruit the right match.
Awesome. Thank you.
Certainly. The second item I wanted to share was our curriculum night for Title I. Just some pictures I want to share. This was an amazing literacy night. If you got to be here, we had a tremendous turnout. 53 families came out, which is half the building. So it's a pretty incredible rollout there. All of the games were literacy based. What you'll see in these pictures, and this first one I want to really share, is our 6th graders came out in stride. We had half of our 6th grade class volunteered and ran a variety of the events that night. Everything from the day glow reading in the dark. I had gotten a bunch of the little snap things they could read in the dark by those. They did craft activities related to reading. They played reading bingo games with the kids. So the 6th graders did a tremendous job of highlighting why reading is their jam, which was their t-shirt slogan. You can see it here, reading's my jam. You can see a lot of family participation. Did a great job with it. I also want to thank a community connection. Mark put us in contact with Mount Grace, and the hikes were magnificent. We did a hike for kindergarten, a hike for 1st and 2nd grade, which is seen here, which took us out the back of the property. You can see the kids were looking at, they're sniffing items, they're looking at the growth of animals on the inside of decaying wood. They got a nice, a little talk point from the Mount Grace people, and the kids really dug into what leaves look like and animals they saw. And then our 5th and 6th grade went over to Poplar Mountain, and they loved it. I mean, they dug into hiking that mountain and seeing the vistas. They also looked at the tree growth, and they looked at undergrowth, and they looked at rocks. So the 5th and 6th grade really just found it to be phenomenal. My hope is that we will be able to continue this relationship with Mount Grace, because it was a really wonderful experience for all of the 4 grades that participated. So thank you, Mark, for that connection. And then the last piece that I want to talk about is I'd like to do a thank you to Laura George and to the entire staff. So I want to start with Laura. I will tell you, one of the things that I was most impressed with her by is her total commitment to relationship building. She is here early in the morning, and usually she and I are walking out together sometime around 5 or so at night or later. I regularly will kind of roll down here when I need a walk break from my office, and she's still in her room getting material ready for the next day and personalizing everything that goes on in that 4th grade classroom right over there. The kids genuinely know that she is there for them, and she spent the last 2 years with the same group of kids, making sure that they had a clear understanding that they were her priority. And I think that, 31 years is magnificent of it in itself, but the relationships that she has fostered with kids over particularly the last 2 years, but throughout her career, really speak to trying to make sure that the students are receiving the kind of quality experience we want for the families in our community. So I genuinely say that I am thankful I got to spend some time with her this year, and I wish her an incredible new chapter in her life, because I think she genuinely deserves that. I also want to thank all of the staff here. It has been wonderful to be able to join them and to become a part of the Erving community. There's so many things that are going on and new things that we are putting into place and new structures that we are kicking off. And I think it's been a lot to do that. And I'm thankful that everybody pitched in. I think I want to highlight one item is that we do a click and respond each week. I do a weekly email on Friday afternoons that goes out sometime after school. And it's just the common thread of every week, I need people to know, I need to hear their voice. And so whether it's something as simple as the book study that we are going to be doing as a staff next year, and I have 5 different books, as well as 2 different books for our paraprofessionals, that they rank ordered their interests. And then I try to align their interests into book groups for next year's conversation. Our PT person, OT person, she created a survey that she wanted to put forth to the staff, and so she became the click and respond for this week. And so I think that understanding that this is a collective effort by so many people, I think has been tremendous, and I'm very excited to be able to continue into this new year and to spend next week and all the other weeks this summer getting myself ready to kick off. So if you're, with the exception of 1 week in the middle of July, I'll be here. If you're looking to talk to me, you can come along and say hello. I think my biggest excitement is that I'm doing an enrichment summer school program that will run for 3 weeks. It is designed to really stretch learning. And so we're going to be doing science, and we're going to be doing creative writing. And we're actually going to be looking at some cooking, as well as some art. And so it's a chance for us to, support some learners who really need that and who wouldn't otherwise be eligible for services because they don't have IEPs, but they still are learners who need some support. And also to challenge some kids who are above grade level and need to be able to be stretched. And so I'm really excited that we're able to offer that to our community. And it's my hope that, and that'll happen in the last 2 weeks in July and the first week in August, it's my hope that over time that will expand and we'll be able to see more kids coming to this morning camp that is designed to enrich. So I genuinely thank you for being willing to let me come be a part of your community.
I do have a question about preschool. I know on our agenda we have a possible vote on the tuition, but do you have a sense of when you're looking to potentially open up preschool seats?
I was waiting until after I knew what the cost was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
We do have applicants already, and so I imagine that once we know that will help.
Mm-hmm.
But we focused most of our energy on just getting the members of the community onboarded, and so that they're familiar with and they've gotten their letters and ready to go. And then once I have information about the cost related to our non-community members, people who are coming from outside, we'll look at really probably the beginning of July to start to try to upload some of that. We won't necessarily rush to do that because I want to make sure that we have gathered all of the in-town residents and have seats for all of them first.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Do you? So you you feel comfortable with the beginning of July
We're gonna-
versus maybe
we're
a
not
little bit
picking-
later?
Right, no, so we're not picking names in the beginning of July. We're going to start to look at, what does this look like? How many seats do we have? How many applications do we have? When do we want to target? I think the most realistic aspect is that we're going to do this when I return from vacation, which is going to be the 21st of, I'll work through the 10th, and then on the morning of Monday 21st, I'll be back. And I think that's when we'll start to make a decision about how many kids we're actually going to bring in.
Is there a process in place right now for those out-of-district families to apply? Is there a deadline? Is there
Nope.
some sort of
So yes,
timeline?
there's a process to apply. There is no deadline because we haven't set a date for pulling names. It will be the same random draw. I will say we are intending to separate 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds in 2 different categories, because we would like to get 4-year-olds, to be fair. We have so few of the current kids coming into the fall that are 4. And the other piece of the puzzle is that though we may take a handful of children in the 3-year-old program because we do know that there's only 6 of those students, the reality of it is I don't wish to go too deep into that program because the following class beneath them, if you were at graduation this evening, you saw about 9 little 2-year-olds who are happily enjoying an older cousin or sibling who are being graduated out, who are all going to be here a year out from now when they're 3. So I'm very reluctant to overfill our 3-year-old program. I'd like to bolster it to maybe a 9, so that we don't have too few a number of kids going into kindergarten the following year. But at the same token, it can't go to 5 or 8 or 9 or 12 kids coming in because I need space for those 2-year-olds who will turn 3 and who will start the following year.
But they are going to reapply every year. So
Yes,
if
they
you
are.
finding that the residents numbers are going up, you simply can just not accept,
Yes.
regardless of whether they came last year
Yes.
or not.
Absolutely, but I want to keep in mind that I know I have 2 years of 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds that are the population in
lot of
Irving
them.
is quite high. Those were the years to have kids, evidently, and so I just want to be cognizant of that. Part of even some of the moves we've made in the physical structure of the building, none of the classrooms moved, but some of the interior uses of other classrooms were moved around with the anticipation of if in a couple of years from now when we have the current 2 and the current 1-year-olds in place, we're probably going to need to have 2 rooms for preschool. And so I want to be aware, do I have that other pre-K room readily available? If so, if not, what is it going to take to make sure it's available? What are the materials? We actually made sure to put all of the supplemental materials from the last time we had 2 preschools into storage, so that anything that we already own, we don't have to repurchase.
Yeah.
It just exists in the building and it's safe and waiting.
So for anybody at home who's listening to this who might have somebody in another community that is interested in applying to Erving Elementary for preschool, they should get an application in.
Yes.
There's no hard deadline, but it sounds as if the end of July-ish is about when the next steps are going to be taken.
Yes.
So applications should be in before that to be considered.
Yes, that would be a good way to say that.
All right, we good?
Yep.
Moving on. I'm fading fast, so we gotta pick this up.
Okay.
Irving Educational Association, can you just do the
Yep, I'll do
highlights?
that. And there's actually some fun things in here, so I'm excited to read this. So 2nd grade students wrote persuasive essays, which is really exciting. The writers thought of something that they would like to change in their world, and the changes ranged from healthcare being free for all, being able to walk our dog on our own, keeping our oceans cleaner, and they have them out by their coveys and for anyone to read. And so they are saying that you are sure to be impressed by their persuasive reasons, and will it change your mind? We hope so. So Those are out in the cubbies to be read. 6th grade students, parents, and staff all couldn't be happier to have made their return to New York City this year. So after a 6-year hiatus for their tradition end of year EES celebratory visit, students got to experience the Big Apple, seeing Yankee Stadium, the American Museum of Natural History, and Central Park on their way in. They visited the Wax Museum. They got to hang out with many celebrities, former presidents, and they got to experience Times Square. They got lunch there. They strolled 10 blocks to the theater, where they got to see the musical Wicked. Kids and parents alike were wildly impressed with the production, with multiple students and some parents who have never been to a Broadway show before expressing a lot of excitement and the possibility of returning this summer. And they're excited to bring that tradition of going to New York back. On May 12th and 13th, the 5th graders had a fabulous 2 days at Morris Hill Outdoor Educational Center. On Monday, they started with the team initiatives in the field area, and in the afternoon, they headed to the low ropes area. And then on Tuesday, they went to the low ropes course and progressed to the high ropes course. The students were amazing, and they all supported each other, cooperated with each other, and problem solved together. They held each other up and took care of each other through the whole process, and they were really excited to go on that field trip. On Monday, June 2nd, the 5th and 6th grade went on a guided hike to Poplar Mountain, which we saw about, and the 3rd grade students recently made their end of year trek to the French King Bowling Center, where they enjoyed fun-filled afternoon of bowling, pizza, French fries, soda, and ice cream sundaes, all in compliments of Eric and Tracy Sem, and a great time was had by all. Literacy, so as it was already talked about, on May 15th, EES held their literacy night for families as part of that Title I grant. So they shared all of the wonderful things that happened there. And kind of just piggybacked on what happened, which was what Beth shared. And then they had field day. So there were some great pictures and events going on there. It was little interesting depending on the weather, but they were able to get field day half in the morning on Friday and then finish some field day activities on Monday. And there were a lot of parent volunteers, so I will just also shout out thank you for allowing parents to come and be a part of that field day experience, because it was really wonderful to see. And then the last is the association wanted to share that there's new officers and representatives that start on June 1, 2025 and will go until May 31st, 2026. The president is Steve Kazmarzik, vice president is Beth Flaherty, treasurer is Jim Hansen, secretary is Heather Peterson, representative 1 is Megan Gagney, representative 2 is Jamie Parse, and representative 3 is unfilled at the moment. And they look forward to working even more collaborative next year with the school committee and administration to provide the best possible educational and social emotional experiences for our students.
All right, and now you're up again for the pie report.
So we met for the last time on the first Monday of June. Unfortunately, our kickball picnic event got canceled due to all the lovely rain that we've been getting. And I think even if we tried to reschedule, every date that we were going to pick also rained. So, something to look forward to for planning again next year. We don't meet again over the summer, but we are going to try to get a meeting in before the start of school to talk about the mom fundraiser, possible back to school events and stuff like that. So keep an eye out on the Facebook page, and if we can get JoJo over the summer, maybe we can sneak some messages on there.
We could do a back to school kickball.
Yeah. There was talk of that too, a back to school kickball kind of picnic. So I know with Beth being here all summer, that will make communication between us a lot easier and kind of planning for something like that. So we're excited to work on events for next year, and as always, families are always welcome to join. And you don't have to join them all. You can join whenever it works for you. And we do appreciate all of the participation and volunteers and donations that we received this year. So.
Wonderful. All right, budget and personnel committee report. Our next meeting is on Monday, September 15th. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay, Joint Supervisory Committee, again, next meeting, September 15th. Anything else to add about that? Okay. I'm gonna, doesn't seem to be anything under old business, but we're gonna move on to the new business, which is the preschool tuition rate, discussion and possible vote.
So, we had discussions when talking about bringing non-residents in about there would be a differentiated tuition. That is something you'll have to set. Currently, the tuition is for Erving residents is $20 a day. So using that as your benchmark, I am not necessarily making any recommendations. I do have the other union schools, if that's helpful for you to kind of gauge where you stand. It may not be, but I don't necessarily have a recommendation. I do think it's reasonable for non-residents to pay a higher rate, but this committee will have to decide what that rate is. What's
Can you share those other schools?
I
can.
We didn't get any additional information other than that, right?
No,
okay.
no, you did not. No, you did not. And they have a little bit different structure as far as like some of them have half day options and that sort of thing. So I'm really just going to give you the full day option because that's what you have. In Leverett, the rate is $45 a day. In Shutesbury, it is $30 a day, and in New Salem, it is $25 a day.
Now those are for.
Those are their tuition. They are in different. Some of them already have non-res, so they have a flat tuition rate.
So those are flat rates for all students.
Right.
Quite a variation.
Leverett's, I will say Leverett's, which is higher, did just go up. That was just voted on by the school committee in the past year.
I think if you look at what childcare costs in that area,
That's exactly what they looked at.
it's
And they looked at
significantly cheaper than if you go private or family childcare or center based. So,
And they also looked at their feeder. They're feeding into the Amherst district, so they looked when making their comparisons. They were looking at the market in the Amherst area, which is different than the area that we're in here. So that's the information that I have for you.
I would agree that I think I would recommend that there be a higher rate. What I don't know is what like Jaduke charges. They run a preschool,
I think it's
and
like
I know both my
65.
computer and my phone are about to die, so I can't even
I
help.
think it's 60, or maybe that's infant. So maybe it's
I think I have that. If you give me a minute.
Greenfield is another one that takes out of
I
district.
don't have Greenfield. That I will tell you. I don't have Greenfield's information.
Okay, I mean it should be on their website, but again my computer just died, so I can't help you. Trying to think of the area preschool, not so much daycare, but actual preschool programs. So Jaduke runs a preschool program. Greenfield runs a preschool program.
so a quick search is 57 per day.
For Jaduke? Okay. I don't know if the Pioneer District takes out of district.
My understanding is they do not.
Okay. All right. And I also do not know if Orange takes out of district preschool.
They do not, and neither does Athol. That I do know.
Okay. So that's our kind of. I also don't think I can think of, unless it's a Catholic school or something. I cannot think of another preschool program in the area.
Does it sound correct that the Academy of Early Learning would charge by the month?
Yes.
Okay. So full day program is $596 per month. Are they a 5 day a week?
They are. Well, it's like 4.5 days, like here.
Okay.
Okay, so I do have some rates for you. I can share this with all of you if that's helpful. Maybe I can. No, because I don't own it. I had asked someone to do it. So some
Can
of
you
those.
do the math on that, Caitlin?
Yeah.
Jaduke is $60.
60. Okay, so that's a little bit
We
more.
had one of the admin assistants in Shutesbury called around, so this was the rates that they were given. Crocker Farm is 48. Redbird Preschool is 70 a day
Where's that?
in Shutesbury. All About Learning in South Amherst is 75 a day.
Oh, there's the Giving Tree in Gill.
I do not have that on this list. Willow Blossom, which is in Leverett, is 76 a day.
Wow.
Cushman in North Amherst. Again, those are a little bit out of your areas. 81 a day. Wow.
Yeah.
For the Love of Learning, which is in Montague,
Oh, yes, it is.
is $50.
Okay.
Now, of course, these are private preschool rates, so that could entail, and I don't know. Some of them provide lunch. We don't. I don't know what that entails. I'm just.
But we
giving
do.
you-
We provide lunch
I'm
and
but I'm
breakfast.
just saying. I'm giving you just the tuition rate.
Sure.
And they could have much longer hours. Also, I'm certain most of them go, and I'm looking very quickly. Many of them go till 5 or 5:30, which could account for a little bit more of a rate.
Sure.
I mean, are we at a state where we want to look at these and then propose an actual number? That where we're at?
I think we're looking to wrap this up now so that this is then Beth can use this in July, or moving forward really, to put this plan into place by the end of July.
I would suggest 48. I'm just looking at them and just saying, oh, okay.
I would say to be cautious that you are a public school. You don't have to make money on your program, where some of these are private businesses and
Absolutely.
they're paying insurance, and not that we aren't, but we're paying it as part of a municipal district. And remember, we're trying to get some 4-year-olds to enhance the experience for our Erving students. So we're really looking at something that benefits our students. That's the whole reason we're opening it up.
Right.
And I would hate for the cost to be prohibitive for some families who this is not really a childcare option, because it's not going to operate on, snow day. It's going to operate on a school schedule. It's not going to operate year round, where a lot of these you buy your spot and you have it all summer. And it's going to go school hours, which doesn't necessarily work for many working parents who are paying these higher rates because they need their child somewhere until 5 o'clock.
Right, and a lot of them are 10-hour days because
are-
they have to offer it through the state.
Right.
What is Greenfield?
Like 30. It was like 29 something, and that's dividing it by 20 days, which is roughly what's in a month, depending on holidays and vacations.
So for
I
easy
would say
figuring,
30.
we're going to say 30.
So, I mean, that when I was looking at prices, that was my initial thought, was $30 a day for outside residents, and see how it goes from there.
And we know we have a lot of littles coming in, so this is not going to be. We know we have 17 or 18 2-year-olds, right? So we may not be taking out of town applications in a year or so. So.
I think we're in the very much unusual situation in that we're not looking to do this because we need to supplement our budget. We're doing this because we're looking for more peers. So other schools may need this to literally help run the program. We are not in that position, which is a lovely place to be. And yeah, if you look at Leverett, Shrewsbury, New Salem, they're averaging about $30. So that's kind of what I was thinking as well. It's an easy number to multiply and figure out, and it's not so much more that I think people will feel like they are being charged a lot just to be charged a lot. But I also do think that it's low enough that people who cannot get into other programs could afford to get into this program. I mean, there are waiting lists in most districts and most preschool programs / districts.
So you're going with the 30.
I feel comfortable with 30. I'm liking 30.
I'd move that we go with 30. If there's a second to that.
I'll second it.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're talking about $30 a day for non-resident preschool students.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a
Moves
motion
and
and a second?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? All right, so all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Great. So for the 25-26 school year, we'll charge $30 a day for non-resident preschool students.
Okay, thank you.
And then, just Beth, if I could just put this in, and I'm quite sure you've thought of this, but to just really stress to parents who are who do end up coming, that it is our school calendar. It is not their home district school calendar.
I hadn't thought about that.
It is
Thank
our
you.
school calendar.
Right.
And so when Erving calls a snow day, there is, regardless of where they live, there is no school. When Erving has professional development days, you know. So just make that
Thank you for that.
distinction really clear, to just make it so we don't have unhappy parents.
And I think what we've also always stressed is it's a full day program, and that's
Oh, there is no option.
you know, there's
but full
it's
day.
not a half day option. It's a full day program, and when there's special, you know, situations and things that's at your discretion, they can figure out, but it's not advertised as a half day program option.
Correct, yeah.
And not saying, oh, well then I can pay $15 a day, because that has been tried. So
Or I can only come Tuesday, Thursday. Like
Right.
that's not an option either. So, and they need to be clear on that.
We've had the discussion, and we already voted, but I just point out for the 1,000 people watching us that we hope will watch us. This isn't costing the Irving taxpayers anything. We're not doing it to make money. We're doing it to benefit our students.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so this tuition money will be going into that revolving account that we just approved at the school, at the town meeting. And then there'll need to be a discussion about what the purpose of that money is. Like what are we going to be doing with that money once we get some. So, all right, great. Moving on. Second read and first vote on a bunch of policies.
Can we vote them all at once?
We can, because this is just
The second
the
read.
second read. It's the first vote on it, so we'll have them come back again for a second vote. So, would you like to do the honors and make that motion?
I'd like to move that we vote as a group policies EEAEC, which is also JICC, policy EFC, policy GBEB, and policy JICC.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
This is our final vote. So we've had a couple of different times to look these over. There's two of them. Do we feel like it's okay to take them together, or do we want to do them separately?
I have a question about the first one.
Okay.
Do you have the signs up yet?
We do not have them up yet, but we are in the process of getting them here. So they will be up when school starts.
Okay. That's my only consideration. Only question. So, I move we vote these both in. We've discussed them. So I make a motion we vote policy EEAJ, motor vehicle idling on school grounds, and policy GBEBC, gifts to and solicitations by staff.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I am going to suggest that we table the executive session. We will need to have an executive session at a later time to finish up our negotiations, and at that point we can vote any executive sessions minutes that we need to vote. So does anybody have any issues with that?
Nope.
Anybody want to say no to that? Okay. All right. So, future business is our next school committee meeting is September 16th. Irving Policy Committee will meet beforehand at 6:30. Then our meeting will be at 7. There was a suggestion made that we continue to have it in this room. I don't have a problem with that as long as, one, that's not going to be a hardship for the custodians to turn around for school the next day, and two, that we don't have so many audience members that won't fit. So in the event that there's something that we feel like might cause more audience members to come, we may need to relocate. But how does everybody feel about having it in here otherwise?
If the school can accommodate it, I think this is great.
It took literally minutes for me and a 5-year-old to set it up.
Okay.
She's
hired.
tremendous help, to be fair. She was a tremendous help. I was thankful to have the assist, but it was minutes of our time to be able to get our custodians off the tables off and make sure they were standing upright. We got all the chairs in. I think it's a really easy thing to do.
So it's easier to do it in here.
And the temperature will be better.
Yeah, well, and it's not so echoey. I think for the sound, for the people at home, I think it's probably going to come out better.
Yeah, because I think they
All
have to
three of them.
take down tables and chairs and move them out of the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put up
So-
the other chairs, and so
And then
there's a
they've
lot
gotta-
more work.
And they have to get in early in the morning to be able to put the tables and chairs back up in the cafeteria because we do serve breakfast
Okay.
for pre-K as well as 3 and 4 in the actual cafeteria each morning.
Okay, so as long as you're saying that there's not a hardship to have it in here, I think everybody's pointing to having it in here. So
I
wonderful,
I did speak with Otis, who sets this stuff up. He's happy to do it here.
great.
And just from my personal point of view, we're all as a group, we're all in this together. If we have 15, 20 audience people, I'll be thrilled. We'll accommodate them.
Need to make sure the tables are in a little closer so that you can get in.
Okay.
Either that or we just have to file in this end first.
It's like loading a plane.
Like loading the
We
plane.
can do
yeah.
this. Okay.
We're
Or
all in
we
this
could
together,
actually
and it
have
lets
the
everyone.
children help me put the different order sequence. Maybe you
That's
get an
entirely
end
up to you.
You might get an end seat next year.
I agree with you, Dan. I do. It does seem a little bit more cozy in here. Wonderful. Okay, so everybody have a lovely summer, however you choose to spend it. We're gonna make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I guess I made the motion to adjourn.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. I'm doing it. We're done. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to go home.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful.
Shannon, can we hand these